Welcome back to the farm, everyone. It is an absolutely stunning day here in central Illinois. 55 degrees, sunshine, and hardly a wind blowing at all. And it's just a primer of what's to come this week. It is still the weekend. I don't normally work, but I just had something come in that may be useful for a situation I've gotten myself in. Yesterday afternoon, I was checking things off my list. Went to change the oil in our 3 small engines that we have used last year. The 2 seed tenders and then the tanker trailer. The newer seed tender wasn't an issue. The tanker was not an issue. This older one, where the oil plug is right under there's a wiring harness or something blocking it, actually ended up getting rounded off last year. I don't know why. Maybe when I did it last year I had the wrong size socket. I don't even remember at this point. I've slept since then. Even though most people recommend a yearly oil change because it had been changed, these things don't really get that many operating hours a year, probably 5 to 10 if I had to guess. I just went ahead and skipped it. Fast forward to this year, I delayed the problem and had to fix it, and I tried to jam on a socket. It didn't work, rounded it off worse. I tried using a bolt extractor on it. It broke the bolt extractor. I don't know why this is cinched on there so hard. My list of strategies are fairly limited because of the tight space here and the fact that this engine doesn't really come up easy. The last resort is going to be to actually unmount the engine and lift it up, and then I can either weld another nut on it and zip it off or do something else. My last resort came in the mail today, which is a set of gear wrench bolts, extractors. I don't think extractors are the right term. Let me add these up. Bolt biter is what gear wrench calls them. These are supposed to just grab on the rounded edges and take it off. Hopefully it works, because this is the last easy option I have available to me. It's really not that hard to remove rounded out bolts if you have plenty of space to work with. I've got maybe 4 inches in there, and you can hardly access it from the top or the side with anything but a ratchet or a wrench. So we're gonna give this a shot, see if it works. It was a 13 millimeter, then I rounded it to a 12. I'm gonna try hammering this one on. I hammered it on. I've actually got what I think is a pretty good bite right now. How is that on there so tight? No, shoot. I'm gonna have to get a cheater bar. I'm liable to break this ratchet. Ironically, the bar I found is the end of a lever jack. Oh, it did it! We got it off! The gear wrench bolt biter did it for us. Obviously, you'd prefer to use a much bigger ratchet than this, though you shouldn't have to. I don't know who over-torqued this that hard. Except you don't have enough diameter clearance to get a 1/2-inch drive ratchet on here. So if you have a stuck bolt head that's rounded off, and I'll show you this one in a minute, I'm not proud of how it looks, these gear wrench bolt biters may be something to look into. It really is a miracle, not only that we got that loose, also that we did not snap this little 1/4-inch ratchet in half, because sometimes this much leverage does not work well with something like this. This would be a more satisfying feeling if I was not the one responsible for it being on this tightly. There she goes. And look at that, the oil doesn't even look like it needs changed. Imagine that. Yeah, we probably could have ran that for another 5 years without changing it, especially given how frustrating this has been for me. All you're seeing is the 5 minutes of success after I got the new tool in the mail today on Saturday. What you didn't see is the non-child friendly video footage from the other day where I spent 2 hours trying to get it out without any luck. Look at this little devil. Hardly any bite left to it, yet this bolt biter got it off. Amazing. But what we'll do is we'll just put it back on with the bolt biter when we're ready to fill it with oil. That way we don't have to buy a new one. We've already got the tools to remove it. Don't worry, everyone. That was 100% sarcasm. We do need to have a very serious talk about whatever party is responsible for this being on this tight. Unfortunately, it was either myself or Dad, and I can't blame him right now because he's taking the weekend off. He's in a warmer place right now, which is saying something because it's fairly warm here. Today's video and lunchtime are brought to you by our good friends at Factor. For those of you who are not familiar with Factor, they are ready to eat, chef prepared, dietitian approved meals that require no planning, no trips to the grocery store, almost no effort other than picking out your meal every week, having it at your home, in your fridge, ready to pop in the microwave for a quick meal that is nutritious, delicious, and simple. It is so simple to come home at lunch, not have to worry about what you're cooking, not eat junk food, not order fast food. You look through your selection you ordered the week prior and decide what you want to go with. I'm down to 4 meals because these are so tasty that I've got a set of small banshees that come around and claim some of my meals occasionally, and I'm perfectly fine with that. I will go with the Tex-Mex beef bowl just because it's sitting on top. I've had it for weeks after weeks. It never gets old, and this one is particularly tasty. It is this straightforward. You pick your meal up out of the fridge, you take it out of this protective cardboard, you find a sharp object to vent the lid, you take the meal to the microwave that's hopefully clean. Sometimes microwaves get messy. 2 minutes, and here comes the hardest part. Waiting on it to warm up. And the second hardest part is waiting on your delicious meal to cool down so you don't burn your mouth when you eat. When we're busy and on the run, overwhelmed with life, or just looking for nutritious options that are cost effective to eat, Factor is a go-to for me. At times, we even let the kids have a meal or two just out of simplicity. They scarf these things down like they're candy. Just the other day, Lenny shared a filet meal with Graham, his younger brother, and Lenny's not usually a big eater, and he made this disappear. That's a pretty good rating in my book. If anyone watching this is looking for something different to try for meal times, I highly recommend Factor. They're offering a great introductory deal. If you go to factor75.com and use code 50aTrippyFarmer, you will get 50% off on your first order as well as free shipping. That is a phenomenal deal, one that's worth trying out if you're interested. Again, factor75.com and use code 50aTrippyFarmer. 50% off and free shipping on your first order. A big shout out to Factor for sponsoring today's video, and I cannot recommend their meals enough. Go check them out. Now back to the regularly scheduled programming. Our nice, beautiful, and relaxing weekend is now over. It's Monday. It's time to get after it. We will stop and admire the 10-day forecast here. I know some of you are thinking exactly what I'm thinking when you see this. It's also better for your mental health to check the weather forecast than the stock market, that's for sure. One day, if I ever hit the lottery, I'm going to put in an overhead door here so we don't have to open this all the time. My goal today is to get both field cultivators outside as well as get both planters hooked up. I do have a seed delivery this morning sometime in the next 30 minutes, so that will interrupt me a little bit. I'll probably move everything out that's in the way and then just use this 8R370 to drag the cultivators out. I'm not going to inspect them, I'm just going to get them outside, out of the way, and unhooked. Something sits in one place for long enough, it becomes storage. going to try to save myself time and add the agility of a front wheel assist to this project. Hydraulic SCV hookups on this tractor are recessed more into the actual machine, and these hoses aren't long enough without lengthening. So instead of spending time lengthening it and then having to re-lengthen or shorten the hoses later, we'll just switch to a 4-wheel drive that's already set up to pull it out. I thought I'd be able to sneak that out before the seed showed up. Supposedly it's up at Dad's though, so we got to go and load that really quick. The forklift's running like a real peach this morning, barely staying above water with the choke on. We got that small load of beans in the shed. That'll be the only beans we plant this year that we actually have to load directly into our own seed tenders. The convenient thing about planting as many Pioneer units as we do is that our local dealer will essentially hot load us with the exact quantity of treated beans we need at any given time within reason. The obvious benefit to that being that we don't have to keep a lot of units of beans in our own shed. The downside is that we do have to kind of work around their schedule, their other customers, and if they're even at the dealership at all. Usually if we're planning, other people are planning, so Wes or Bruce are up there and they can load us if we need it, or they'll come in. Dad's planter tractor was over here in the seed shed, and I want to hook his planter up later today, so I might as well take it over. 2 birds with 1 stone. Katie was floating around before we went to get seed, and it looks like she got a field cultivator out by herself. Hopefully she didn't break anything because she didn't have a spotter. We're not doing any kind of setup today, just dragging these out of the way while we have nice weather. Looks like Katie got it out without issue. Believe it or not, it opens up a tremendous amount of space in the shed if you get 2 gigantic tillage tools out. We'll go ahead and get the second cultivator out and then kind of evaluate where we're at in the day. If it's getting later, we may just go ahead and take an early lunch break and then focus on the planters after. It's good to get lunch in a timely manner. It keeps morale high, especially for me. Just ask my wife. It's amazing how quickly you forget what you did. To gain an extra 5 foot of clearance in front, it's enough to get the blocks out. Sometimes it's almost like we know what we're doing.
Yep. We just leave them over here, and then after you get the cultivator out, well,
I'm probably gonna pull the tractors back in here.
Grabbed it. Oh, you don't need a jack? How'd you get that without a jack?
I put the jack on it and jacked it up.
Oh, I brought a jack because I remembered.
No. You just had to be here when we unhooked it.
I was here when we unhooked it, and it was a fiasco.
One to get out. Okay, both field cultivators are outside and out of the way. If everything goes to plan this week, we may work a 60 of corn stalks and plant some beans just to see what happens. Before we bring the planter tractors in here, we're just going to go ahead and service the generators. I think I'm just going to grease the splines in between this year, not changing the oil.
Joe Pick was texting me yesterday, he said that hollyhock was gonna be, yeah.
Or did you bend that yourself?
Oh, it's made to be bent.
You bought it like that.
Yeah, it's just a special type of screw. It's not made for this now.
These are pull out this. Don't run them over either.
What? Everyone zipped off their own direction for a quick lunch break. While my food was digesting, I really wanted to take a nap, but I did a lap around the block, and it is incredible to see what the sunshine and heat can do for drying these fields out. There is not a lot of moisture on our farm right now, other than that top couple inches. By the end of the day today, another day like this tomorrow, even warmer, and then a third day on Wednesday, even warmer, a lot of this stuff would theoretically be dry enough to do field work to plant. I don't want to get ahead of my skis and look silly, so my goal today is to get the planters ready, or at least get the bean planter fully ready to plant, and then we are going to do some mapping tomorrow, finish a few field boundaries, and then we'll put the dome back on the corn planter tractor, get that all done. Wednesday I'm going to spray because I have some soybean stubble that's getting a little hairy with winter annuals. We get an opportunity in March to get out there and take care of those, we're going to do it. We also may do some field cultivating around some edges, some other places, just to kind of target some bad spots. That's the goal right now. We're going to go ahead and try to drag out the corn planter. I have no intentions of even actually putting the delivery brushes in this. I'm just getting it out of the way because moving this will make getting the DB60 out much easier. Might as well hook it up, and then once we free up this corner, we can pull the bigger tractors back in here and not have to worry about them. I'm starting to get those early season jitters, so I might as well get after it here. Either this has gotten lighter or I've gotten fatter. I know which one of the two it is. Okay. Wasn't too bad. I'm gonna start it and raise it up. If you see anything squirt out oil, yell.
Okay.
Other than being electrically driven and having individual hydraulic downforce, this planter is pretty simple. Just pop a plate in and then close it up and it should be ready to plant. All 36 plates are in. It's about a 10 to 15 minute job by yourself. Chris is here, he's just kind of supervising right now. It's a beautiful afternoon. We're pretty much ready to go, other than checking the depth when we get to the field, maybe the next couple days. We greased every single zircon here last summer before we put away, so it's turnkey at this point. I'm gonna hop in, just test fire everything, see if we've got power to all the units, make sure we check all those boxes, and then fold her up and put her away and be patient. The irony in that statement is that of all of the things the good Lord has blessed me with in my life, patience has just never been one of them. If you've ever met my dad or dealt with him, I'm actually very patient compared to him. Just in my own right, I'm impatient. One thing I'm not a big fan of is just how haphazardly Deere manages the hoses on these. It needs to have some kind of a hanger up here for you to mount a hose bracket on. They just kind of throw you the wolves and make you figure it out with ratchet straps and bungee cables. Just a lot could go wrong here. Normally it's fine, but eventually these will wear out, wear against the frame or something, it'll become an issue. I'll keep an eye on that as we start to plant, and I may make some adjustments before we go. I'm just not a huge fan of the lack of options for lifting these up. Case in point, this one is pinched between the frame and the cylinder. Why is there not some kind of shielding or something designed on this to prevent that from happening? There's a little notch out of this hose that's been pinched, notch out of that hose that's probably been pinched by the cylinder. Obviously this is not doing the job. I just don't really know how to keep these hoses out of this area unless I just really yank them up this way to kind of float them in the air. Maybe my only option. While I test out and make sure this is gonna work, I sent Chris to start the third semi. Going to go ahead and hook up to the new tanker. We're gonna leak check it once I get this done, everything else tucked away. And we may even fill it with some water just to kind of see if the system's gonna run all right. I'm confident it will. You just don't want to get caught with your pants down. You might as well check when it's nice out. It's not a big deal. That rock is also not very packed down. I'm worried that if I fill a bunch of water in that tanker, my jack stands may actually sink and it's gonna make hooking up to it later in the week harder, so I might as well just hook up to it now and leave the semi out. Just like riding a bike. Vacuums, PTO, enable, seed star, on. All three vacuums are running. Slip over to our plant page. You see some pressure. 2 is not really doing anything yet. There we go. I think I've been over pressuring my units. I'm gonna run them a little lower on margin this year, especially in tilled ground. Population, we do not plant 180. We were probably replanting last. We are actually lowering our overall soybean population this year. The last couple of years, we've targeted 160. I've been shooting for 140, arguing with the powers to be here. They want the thicker stand of soybeans to choke out weeds and just the added insurance of more beans, lowering the likelihood of having to replant. This year, instead of 160, we're actually going to drop down to 150, which is a substantial decrease. Our seed dealers weren't too thrilled to hear about that. I'm going to probably set to like 147. I kind of plant faster than the bean planter can accurately singulate and drop. We get some doubles and some skips occasionally. By lowering that, if I'm getting a lot of doubles, that actually should get my final population at the end of the field closer. I've noticed this planter's usually 2 to 3% high on what you target. So last year I targeted 156 a lot, and my math was coming out around 160 even with my target versus my calculated drop based on the units I picked up from the seed dealer. I think we'll start with 147 and see how the first field goes here in a couple days. Planter runoff. Although I don't have seed, I'm not going to see any measurements here. What I will see is RPM. So RPM is indicating that my units are turning. As long as I see that in the green across the board, I'm going to assume that we're working. And that's good enough for me. From here, it does appear that my trapdoors on the bottom of the seed tanks are closed. That'd be a nasty thing to find out after you put your seed beans in. They're open. I was just gonna leave this hooked up and parked here, but might as well just move it over to the spigot and fill it up there if we're gonna be using it the next few weeks. Got the tanker moved over. I ran a little bit of water out to kind of flush out some of the metal shavings. Now I'm going to go ahead and fill it up. I don't know how much I'm going to put in. Somewhere between 500 and 7,000 gallons while it's sitting here. I'm already seeing a tiny drip here. I don't know where exactly it's coming from. That tiny little drip's not a huge deal. We can address that here in the next day or two. I'm gonna go ahead and start pulling things back inside. We have a lot more space now that the field cultivators and the VT tool are out of the shed, so I can get creative. I decided to just leave the sprayer out because I'm going to run with it either tomorrow afternoon or the following day. Bean planter should be ready to go. It is Monday. I'm thinking Wednesday afternoon or Thursday midday, I'm going to plant 60 acres of beans. It's going to take a lot actually not to plant more than that, but I need to be a little bit responsible and not just throw all the chips on the table at once, even if it seems like a reasonable risk. I talked to Doug up at Helena. He advised to just try tightening these bolts a little bit, see if that fixes it. Now it's leaking in multiple places. Unless it was leaking here all along. This is where I first noticed it. And after tightening it, and hopefully not over tightening it, that's leaking. There's a gasket in here. Maybe it's over tightened to begin with. It's not really enough to matter. It's just the principle of the leak makes you want to fix it. Whatever you do tonight, ladies and gentlemen, do not forget that you have a hose running, because our well will fill this tanker up in a few hours, and it will keep filling. I've only made that mistake 2 other times. Not that big of a deal, but you don't want to waste water, especially with how dry it is. It's a beautiful day, and all of our fields look dry. This is the field I want to plant this week. Usually one of our drier fields. A little damp on top still. It looks drier from the road. It would be pushing it to get this in by Wednesday. I think a good game plan is spray Wednesday, maybe plant Thursday if the weather cooperates. A few more days of sunshine will make a huge difference on ground like this. Among other things on my to-do list, I've also got to do some scouting for the spraying, which I'm going to go do. I'm not going to bore you with all that. I think this is a good place to end the video unless something crazy happens. I greatly appreciate you all tuning in. I sure hope you're having an awesome week, and I hope to see you in the next one. Have a good one, everyone. Peace!